really interesting fight at women's flyweight, and it would have been even more so if we had the originally scheduled bout between Lucky Lauren Murphy and Cynthia Calvillo, and it would be hard to argue that that fight may have produced a title contender. Okay. I mean, Cynthia Calvillo in her flyweight debut put on an absolute statement with a big win over Jessica Eye, and I thought automatically title shot, but not so. So we were originally supposed to get Murphy and Calvillo. Calvillo out, so now we get a relative unknown in Lilia Shakarova, unless you know women's flyweight. Now, fighter from Uzbekistan, a nation that we don't see overly represented in some of the higher levels of MMA, but Lilia Shakarova, a great record. She's fought previously with Guerrilla Fight Championships and Fight Nights Global, and a fighter that actually had quite a bit of buzz around her. There was an opportunity maybe this summer. Will she sign with Bellator? Will she sign with the UFC? Well, she gets a short notice call with the UFC against a really tough out in Lauren Murphy. And Matt, we don't have odds out on this fight, but I anticipate Lauren Murphy's going to be an overwhelming favorite in this one. Lilia Shakarova in her last time out, a win over Egul Kuza Abdulvakad. I tried. And in that fight, I mean, at the time, her opponent was 1-1. She's now 1-3. But Shakarova looked great in that fight. So then we went back and watched some of her other contests. The one against Yulia Borisova with Fight Nights Global a couple of years ago. You get a better idea of what kind of strengths Lilia Shakarova possesses. And this is a fighter that's coming out of a decent gym. I mean, she spent time training at Buka Gym with Zubair Takugov and Shalga Shumagulov. And I mean, you know that she's a freestyle wrestling national champ, and she won that flyweight championship with GFC. What that means, not a whole lot, because the level of competition wasn't that great. But national wrestling champion, she can tie into that. And actually, we talked about Umar Nurmagomedov earlier on the card. The fact that he has good wrestling, his striking's half decent. Lilia Shakarova, she's fine with throwing some spinning kicks. She's fine with setting things up with her hand. She is a well-rounded fighter. I just think it's too big of a step up in her debut to take on somebody like Lauren Murphy. Now, could she absolutely wow us and put on a statement win? Of course she could. I mean, this is a good stage and a good opportunity for her. Look what Calvillo did with Eye. Upsets happen all the time. This is a great opportunity. I'm really looking forward to this fight. It's just a big ask in your debut.
It is, and I'm in the same boat as you. I'm really upset that we aren't getting the title eliminator that we were promised, because Lauren Murphy versus Cynthia Calvillo, whether or not you think that either one of them have a shot against Valentina, it doesn't really matter. Just as a fight in itself, I think that was a very interesting contest, but for Shakarova, it's going to be interesting to see how she deals with not only the experience, but also the size and the strength of Lauren Murphy. Because Lauren Murphy, a lot of people forget, she had her first run in the UFC at 135 before there even was a 125 division, before there was even a 130 or 115 division.
That's former Invicta bantamweight champ.
Exactly. So Lauren Murphy's been around, she's done it, and she really is one of the pioneers of women's MMA, one of the early Invicta fighters. And on this recent run that she's had in flyweight, she's looked really good. In the Roxanne Modafferi fight, I thought Roxanne was going to cause her a lot of troubles, but I actually thought she looked as good in that fight as she has in any fight, and she really showed that all of her MMA skill set is kind of starting to come together. She will mix in the wrestling with her striking. She has a very frustrating style of striking because no, she's not going to go out there and hit you with one punch Francis Ngannou style, or she might not overwhelm you with volume like a Diaz brother or like Max Holloway, but she's just really frustrating in that she's always on you, and she really takes a lot of the air out of the room, because no matter what you do, Lauren Murphy's going to be in your face. And for Shakarova, I don't think her wrestling's good enough to just go out there and dominate Lauren Murphy to get her to the ground, because the size and the strength of Lauren Murphy is... she's big enough that I think it is going to cause troubles for Shakarova. And also, on the feet, Shakarova does have quite a few kicks, and she does have that nice sort of Taekwondo-esque front kicks and spinning kicks like you had mentioned. But those aren't kicks that have a lot of pop behind them. Those aren't the most damaging shots. And I don't think you're going to land a front kick to knock out Lauren Murphy in a UFC fight. I think the experience is on Murphy's side. I think the level of competition is on Murphy's side. I think she's been able to fight at the highest level, and she's been able to get really good wins in the UFC. I just think Lauren Murphy, again, we're talking about her like she should be in those, top 3 matchups, top 5 matchups in her weight class, and currently she's welcoming a fighter into the UFC. So I think Lauren Murphy has fought better fighters than Shakarova, and I think she's beat better fighters than Shakarova.
Now, I mean, the 2 losses Lauren Murphy has on her record that you kind of worry about. I mean, the Sijara Eubanks loss and a loss to Nico Montano as well. So keep that in mind. And if Lilia Shakarova is going to get a win, it has to be a lot of pressure, a lot of volume, and a lot of wrestling. And we saw it, and as I pronounce wrestling oddly, we saw it, if you want a fight to kind of measure up against, and this is going to be really weird, but it's a fight that we just watched because it happened just last week, Mateusz Gamrot, Guram Kutateladze. And we had seen with Mateusz Gamrot, with KSW, he had a lot of success with the power and the volume, but mostly the volume, the stance switches, this and that. In the fight against Kutateladze, it didn't really come together until the third round. But if Lilia Shakarova is going to have an ounce of a shot to win in this fight like third round Mateusz Gamrot did, because it was a lot of pressure, a lot of volume, and just rinse and repeat with takedowns. And if they don't work for you, just keep going with the pressure. Is that sustainable? No. So for Lilia Shakarova, it's a slim margin for her to get a win. There's definitely an opportunity out there. We don't have Topology picks out there. We don't have odds on this fight either, because it's just come out as we tape on Saturday, really early on these ones. So I'm going to side with what I know in Lauren Murphy. I really do like the upside with Lilia Shakarova. And if she gets a huge statement win, boy, is that flyweight division absolutely wide open. So I'm going to side slightly with Lauren Murphy.
So am I. But again, we saw the last woman who's supposed to fight for the title in Joanne Calderwood. She was lined up for a title shot, ended up losing to Jennifer Maia, and now she's barely even in the top 5. So this division, it's so wide open that 1 or 2 big wins can basically put you in a title shot. It's kind of crazy, but I do have Lauren Murphy.
Really looking forward to it, though. The short notice debut from Uzbekistan's Lilia Shakarova. I'm going with Murphy. Matt's going with Murphy. You're not going to want to miss the rest of the picks for this card. We got a great main event title unification bout between Khabib Nurmagomedov and Justin Gaethje. Just keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, Matt. As we always say, let's get into it.